Okay, let me get started then. It is the 187th Security Thought Leadership webinar. And you know, the idea of thought leadership is what we try and do in these is identify a topic and examine the different perspectives on it in order to try and find out what are the issues, how should we think about them. If we do that well, we critique today what is going on in order to get a better type of security tomorrow. And today is June the 1st, and June is Pride Month. And what a great moment, what a great opportunity on the first day of this month to hold a thought leadership webinar on pride and the security sector, celebrating our LGBT plus community, trying to understand though, not just what's going well, but what are the issues and barriers that are thwarting progress, and how might we begin to think what those barriers are and understand how we may overcome them. As always, I have three experts who all come at this from slightly different angles. And so in a second, I'll be inviting the three of them to introduce themselves. And once they've done that, I'll be inviting each of them to make an opening statement, 3 minutes for them to say what they think about this topic. And then I'll be inviting you to ask any questions that you've got. If you do, please use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. Get your questions in early. Let's try and understand what's going on. Without further ado, let's go and meet our first panelist. Satia, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Martin. Thank you for having us, and happy Pride Month to all the listeners. My name is Satia. I'm CEO of the International Professional Security Association. I'm also head of Diversity, Inclusion and Belonging at Securitas. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Satia. And let's go to Oliver. Oliver, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, I'm Oliver, or Ollie Lincoln. I'm the UK sales manager at Securitas. I've been here for 7 years, look after the UK sales team. I'm also chair of the Pride at Securitas LGBT Employee Network.
Thank you very much indeed. And now we're going all the way over to Canada. Heather, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Hello from across the pond. Heather MacDonald. Preferred pronouns, if you need to use them, are she, her. I'm an enterprise account executive with Resolver at Kroll Business, and have been actively involved with ASAS Women in Security Community for the last couple of years, and have been the Atlantic Canadian Women in Security chapter liaison.
Thank you very much indeed, Heather. Right, three experts. Some of you will know these individuals from your networks. Now we're going to tackle the subject. So I'm going to go to Satia first and ask her opening statement. And Satia, could you just at the start just clarify what we mean by LGBT plus? Satia, over to you.
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, Martin, I'm a proud member of the LGBT plus community, and the abbreviation they stand for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, and then the plus is for anybody else that falls under the other non-binary, intersexual categories or queer. So that's a little bit about the abbreviations. So yes, I've been part of this industry, wonderful industry, for 30 years. But as a Asian gay woman of color, it took me 23 years to come out as a gay woman, and that did not sit right with me. Can we do more? Should we be doing more? Absolutely, absolutely yes. In order for our industry to grow, to continue to be being successful, that inclusion, that belonging piece is absolutely crucial for us all. I want to be part of an industry where everybody belongs and they can be their true selves in the workplace. Do not underestimate the power when an individual is empowered to be them complete selves in the workplace. There is also, let's not forget, 68 countries out there still criminalize the LGBT community. 11 countries it's punishable by death. The recent news about Uganda, the most extreme LGBT laws ever passed, where again it's who I am in Uganda would mean that it's punishable it's punishable by death. But on the other side, I have a responsibility to family, 4 nieces, 2 nephews. I want them to be growing up in a society where they can be their complete selves, and without, I don't want who they are, their background, their sexual orientation to be a hindrance to being the best versions of themselves. I hope that's 3 minutes.
Thank you very much indeed. So excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Well, we'll come back and pick up on some of these points and some of the thinking that goes behind some of the circumstances that you've raised. Let's now go to Oliver. Oliver, can we have your opening statement, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Martin, for having me. I'm happy Pride Month, as Satia said. It's great to be talking about this, and to come full circle a little bit. 7 years ago, when I joined the security industry, I never thought I'd be talking about my sexuality. And it was part of the reason we set up the Pride at Securitas network. I felt that nobody should come into the security industry and feel that they can't bring the very best version of themselves to work. They shouldn't feel afraid to be out at work. The perception actually that I had was far worse than the wonderful reality. And the power of being yourself, as Satia has just said, is so important for every single organization to have people feel comfortable in their own skin at work and not hiding anything. And Satia's mentioned a couple of things about statistics there, and LGBT teens are twice as likely to commit suicide as their straight counterparts. This is so important. We have to look after the LGBT community. We know that there are significantly more mental health issues. People need better support. We need to be there as their employers to provide that. But for me, the sector is trying to become more inclusive. Efforts to support, Pride and just be generally more visible around, particularly around June, is better. People are doing a better job of supporting LGBT colleagues, and we're starting to see some employee networks now pop up around the sector as well, which is really positive. That for me is the difference. When employers can give LGBT colleagues a real safe space, a network that's also exec sponsored from the top. It's so crucial to have that buy-in, by the way. It means that you can have actual escalation. It means that it shows all of those colleagues that the company's really taking this seriously, that the company really cares about LGBT issues. We're still a far cry from having an inclusive sector, but I think progress is continuing to be made, and people are certainly becoming more aware as well of LGBT people and educational things that they need to learn. But inclusive language is still quite a struggle, and I'll see it from time to time where I have to pick up colleagues on assuming that I will have a female partner, when in fact I then have to come out again, essentially, to another person, and another person, and remind them that my partner is actually not female, and he might not be too happy if I keep calling him my wife, So we just have to do a better job of this. We have to change language as well across the piece. Manned guarding, manpower. We have to stop this, and we need to be guardians and custodians of that language as much as anything else, and challenge it. Whether it's LGBT language, whether it's old-fashioned sexist language that we need to change. Trans people in particular are really under threat, and there's more scrutiny amongst the trans community than ever before. There's particular issues around gender identity that have really come up as of late, and that's really stagnating some of the progress that we've started to see. And that's where again, it doesn't matter whether we're L, G, B, or T. We have to support all of each other as an entire community at work. Great. I hope that's 3 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic, Oliver. Thank you very much indeed. I mean, really interesting points, and I will come back to some of those definitely in the questioning. Just to say to the audience, if you have got your own questions, I know some have sent me in advance. If you haven't got your own questions, use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll endeavour to incorporate those in the discussion. Well, let's go all the way to Canada now and hear what Heather's got to say. Heather, your opening statement, please.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's really going to echo things that we've just heard Satia say and Oliver. This became a an initiative and something I've become passionate about since joining the security and risk space about 5 years ago. It took me way too long to be able to live my true self and my, my experience. And that was a detriment to my mental health. And so being able to now live comfortably, unapologetically, maybe it's trying to create those safe spaces and those experiences and opening those doors for those out there like me a few years ago who didn't feel, comfortable doing something or saying anything or being my true self, because to Oliver's point, we're constantly having to come out. It's not like one big party, boom, here we are, we're all here. It's every new scenario, it's uncertain. And, there has been progress made across the globe in a lot of respects, but, lots of stats there speaking to the fact that still progress to go. We're seeing a lot of things here in North America, a lot of particular areas and regions. There are often conferences that are held there that are no longer safe for marginalized communities, visible minorities, due to a lot of the things that are coming up in some of these locations. So, what I love about the security space, though, is we're all sharing a common goal of reducing risk and keeping people safe and reducing them from harm. If there are folks that today don't feel safe and can't be them true selves, are we doing a good job of that? Are we making informed decisions? To speak to numbers, ASIS recently put out a report by Rachel Briggs and Paul Sizemore. And one of the stats that I found quite striking was that 94% of candidates for security risk and resilience roles are men. And 70% come from former government background like military, police, or intelligence. So, diversity of thought and opinion is a superpower. And if we are only looking at, things from the same perspective, from the same lived experiences over and over again, we're not going to get new ideas or new answers. So what's the risk of that? Are we making truly informed decisions when it comes to keeping people, assets, organizations safe? No, it's more than it's more than just sitting in a room and making ourselves feel good because it's everyone around the same tables thinking the same thing. We need to be challenging those thoughts and challenging opinions, and that's how we become better. I mean, I think we're all afraid. The barrier often I see is people are afraid of messing up and making mistakes, but the reality is we don't get better unless we make mistakes. And it's creating a space where it's safe enough to make those mistakes, to be okay messing up, to have radical candor and call some men out if they, but it's okay. Sorry, move on. Like, it's not a big deal. You learn from it, and we try to be better. To language, I'm trying to stop saying guys. It's a big part of my language, and use more inclusive terms like folks. It's been a struggle, but I've asked people to call me out. It's helped when it comes to thinking, especially about folks who are non-binary, they, them pronouns. It's not a natural thing, so it does take some practice, but now it's become more natural. So it's really those small steps of inclusion. I mentioned my pronouns at the beginning here. Creating safe spaces more than just guards, gates, and guns. It can be something as simple as adding your preferred pronouns to your email signature, your Zoom or your Teams profile. And that simple act might create a safe space for someone who identifies as non-binary to express themselves, to feel safe. So it's really an easy way to celebrate the community, not just for June, but year round.
Heather, thank you very much indeed. And really, really interesting. Let me come to you all with a question that I'd like all of you to address, which you've touched on. And it's this issue. And look, it is still a male dominated, you raised this point, Heather, and it has always been that way. It is still dramatically male dominated. The progress that's been made here has been much celebrated, but it's marginal. And I just want to be honest with you all that we can sort of talk about good things being nice, but this isn't great. This isn't great progress in the great scheme of things. Why don't we call it out more and start to really be a bit more attacking of the fact this is nowhere near good enough, and it's a very negative indictment on the security world we've got to this stage, and maybe the voices challenge it have not been strong enough. Satia first.
Yeah, well, look, You know, I was, when I'd done some research for the Kroll and my team to go further, the stats in terms of that inclusion piece and belonging piece across the industry, we are getting better at it. However, the LGBT plus community, 1 in 5 people are targeted for negative comments in the workplace. Over a third of the LGBT plus people feel they have to hide who they are in the workplace. 1 in 5 feel they are limited because they are part of the community. So look, there is a significant amount of work that needs to be done. And look, the way we tackle it, it starts, like Oliver said, it has to get that C-suite buy-in. There are senior, there are the bigger service providers, we do have that buy-in, and you can see how that filters through an organization where, because inclusivity becomes the norm. It becomes the norm. The fear factor that Ollie has talked about, you eradicate that through training, education. There's actually specific LGBT plus inclusion in the workplace training, and that was created. That was a portion of the LGBT community saying, these are the struggles that we have in the workplace. This is how you can help us become more inclusive. I did that course. At the beginning of this year. So when we talk about that training and education, we're talking about at C-suite level. And I don't mean just the LGBT. It's about diversity and inclusion holistically. We need to look at it holistically, and then look at it from a management perspective, target that training. So look at the bias training, have a look at that, the cultural piece. The C-suite level training will be more strategic and etc. So for me, it's about breaking down the barriers that we may have. It's all about, and it's the biggest, the key factor is engagement. Everybody, engagement is so key. Come amongst the community, really get to know what is important to the LGBT plus community. They have key dates throughout the year, accounted 9. Get to know them, be aware of them, be part of them, raise awareness, go out and be part of the communities, set special dates, calendars, etc. And look.
Okay, let me just bring in Oliver here, if I might, Satia, just to add a little bit. So, but Oliver, so Satia's there outlined some of the sort of things we can do. I want to go back to this point though, and you said it yourself, and if I could just sort of quote you: far cry from having an inclusive sector. Why not? I wonder if we can sort of address the barriers that we need to tackle here, because that strikes me as the nail on the head.
Absolutely. I mean, it's terrifying being quoted, by the way. It's the never-ending fear. What did I just say? But you're absolutely right. It's farcical, really. You know, we are talking about good progress. We are talking about good things, but we are far, far, far from where we need to be. And that will take time. That will take time, you know, and the first thing, Satia's focused on a few things. We have to be visible. We have to create visibility in the workplace for LGBT people, because we are the security sector. How visible are we all as an entire sector towards LGBT pride events, towards putting something on our websites about diversity? How many of us are doing that? We're starting to create a better job of it, but compare it to like the tech sector, where they are screaming about you know, how important diversity is and why it's important and why it creates success, and showing, you know, great LGBT people within their workplace. And that's where we have to start. We have to talk about LGBT issues. We have to make LGBT people visible within our work organisations. And then, you know, Satia has hit the nail on the head. Engagement is absolutely.
What's the difficulty with this though, Oliver? So when you say that, it sounds okay, you know, no big gripe with that. But why have we got to a stage where we're saying this when it hasn't happened?
Because I think you know, and I'm going to talk about it within Securitas. We have 10,000 employees in the whole company. And we believe we have got about 30 people in our Pride, 30 to 40 people in our Pride network. So 40 divided by 10,000 is pretty shocking, really. We're less than 1%, you know, of people connected into our network. So and maybe that, of course, doesn't represent a complete true picture of how many LGBT people we have, but it should give a really clear indication that if that doesn't show how many people we have in our organisation, it's a declaration of how many people want to say and be part of the LGBT network. Satia said it already there. How many people want to put their hand up and admit that they're LGBT in the workplace? Not always people want to do that. So we have to create this inclusive workplace, and it has to come from the top, and it has to be a priority. That is where it's key. At the moment, it's important, it's on the agenda, it's things that need to happen, but is it the #1 priority at the moment in the workplace? I'd probably say not. You know, it's part of an important issue. And when we speak to our clients, which, you know, we're doing every single day, this is really important to them. They want to know that diversity is important to us. So we have to also demonstrate to our clients that it's important and partner with them at the same time.
Okay, fair enough. So I want to get your point on this. And Sarah, the bit that I'm trying to understand is, what are the barriers to progressing more? What are the structural things we've got to start challenging to make the sorts of things we're talking about, visibility, engagement, hierarchies? What's the barrier we've got to overcome, or barriers? Sarah, your thoughts?
Heather,
sorry, your thoughts.
I was like, am I Sarah?
Sorry, I'm reading a question from Sarah in advance. Sorry, Heather.
That's okay. I can be Sarah as well here for today. No, I think part of the barrier is we're doing a much better job on the recruitment front. I think a lot of companies are, from a human resources and talent perspective, are doing a good job of bringing more folks in, but we're still seeing that bottleneck as we move up. We're still seeing, you know, in leadership positions, folks who are typically cis white men. You know, there are strides, there are changes happening, but we need to see that at all levels, because when we're talking about pushing this, you know, top down, the C-suite needs to be living and breathing this. And maybe part of the barrier is we've done a poor job as a community, or those advocates of selling the value of it. You know, because often, you know, I think as salespeople, we're helping people sell the concept of a new software, let's say, and why, and a C-suite doesn't care if it makes you necessarily more efficient or more effective. It's like, how do you save me money, or how do you make me money? And at the end of the day, that's what matters for a lot of these companies. It's, how do I make money? And really, if we're not creating these environments and these barriers continue to exist, you're missing out on a competitive advantage. And because the business case for diversity is clear, diverse teams are more innovative. You know, they're going to disrupt, they're going to be game changing, they're going to be more productive, generally speaking. So if we start maybe using the language of business when talking about this versus like, how do we create these safe spaces, maybe we'll get that buy-in, because today I think that's where we're stopping. You know, we're going into these initiatives. We're part of task forces where it's like-minded people. It's like, you don't need to, I don't need to sell this concept to you, Oliver, or to you, Satia, or to you, Martin. We need the people who, we need to hear it on these type of calls, and we need them committed to it. And I think that barrier is, maybe it's not a priority. They see it as something that's nice to have, but when times come to cut, it's not a priority, when in fact, much like security, if the company isn't, you know, we saw it during COVID, a lot of security budgets were slashed. Probably a time when they could have looked inward and said, how can we become better at the end of the day? But, you know, until we get leadership positions that are more diverse, I think we're still going to run into a lot of barriers. But training can help, and creating space for making mistakes as well.
Okay, listen, thank you very much, because that point about the LGBT plus community presenting its case in different terms, and the business one is a good one, Heather, right? Because that's speaking the language of business. This is a commercially wise decision to make, you know, of everything else. Language, you've mentioned language. I want to get to it because Panelists has asked a question. Thanks, Panelists, for asking that question. What are some examples of inclusive words to use instead of guys and manpower? I think this is an important point, or other example, because these have been in use for years. They've been in common parlance. Man garden, you mentioned earlier, and we just need, I think, to try and find ways of how do we find a new language for this. Just by the way, I remember many years ago, when I was a student in sociology lecture, so it's many years ago now, someone objected, a woman in the objected to the word manhole cover, arguing this was a working access facility. And this is decades ago, by the way. And there's sort of what are you talking about? It was a sort of an outrage, but presumably we're going to have to, if we're going to find a language, we're going to have to present meaningful alternatives. So I don't necessarily want you to pick each one and tackle each one. The way of finding another language. Heather, is it already there, the language, or are we going to have to go out and find it?
I think it's something we're overthinking, really. And you know, especially when we're confused or you don't know, or someone presents potentially as non-binary even, it's like, use their name. You know, let's not overcomplicate this. You don't need to have a pronoun thrown in all the time. It could be their name and that is who they are.
That could be, but what about man guarding then?
Guarding.
Okay.
You know, I think I had the same concept. I play sports and you know, hockey, and I would say man on, like when someone was going after, you know, there's someone going to be attacking you and trying to steal the puck. And I was like, how can we change this? I was sitting on the bench overthinking this as well. I'm like, I got to stop saying man on, just say one on. It was, you know, as simple as like, just stop overthinking it. I think it's a little complex. To the guy's point, I just, you know, Googled, I started saying y'all for a while, teammates, you know, I felt like I was down south, but I just did a Google search. Is there different ways to greet folks? And I still, you know, I think I slipped back into it in the comfort of home, I think, but it's something I'm going to continually work on, because to the pronoun point, using that type of inclusive language just might making one person feel a little bit safer and a little bit more included, which at the end of the day is the goal of all of us anyway. So
absolutely. I wonder, Satia, whether I could just come back to you on this. I wonder, it is clearly manned guarding could be easily replaced by the word guarding, although that's a pejorative term as well. Of course, people are against the word guarding. You've got to call people security officers. Okay, but I'm thinking more generally about how we get across the alternative vocabulary because I mean, things like manpower, I mean, we could say human resources, I suppose, and people. How do we get thinking on this language? Is there a way in which there could be a new lexicon put out there? Do we need that? Not the arguments about why it's important, because I think that we get. It's about the process of engaging people in this new language. And Oliver, I'll come to you next. Satia.
When this was brought up, and when I was a security services director, you make that decision. I made that decision, took all the man guarding of the websites, everything, security services, security professionals, risk professionals. You know, there are many alternatives. So as a business, you can make that decision. However, you know, we have the support of the regulator, we have the associations, we have the various institutes that we can draw on and bring in and change that narrative. But it's collaboratively is something we can do. But as a business, if you want to make that decision, we're empowered to do that, to do so. And we should, you know, you know, these discussions that we have, narrative is very important across our industry. But I think that there's nothing stopping leaders, C-suite level, or whatever management, bringing this up and saying, actually, let's make the change. But it starts from you where you are, and then we can replicate that across collaboratively, go to the regulator, get buy-in from various associations, etc., etc. That collaborative piece, I think, is key in changing in narrative. Sadly, Martin, we're in a world where, look, we may not give it the time or effort at the time, but if someone else does it, we look up and we think, oh, actually, we'll follow that trend. That's what we're going, and so on. So that's a way we can look at it, approach it, and tackle it, and so on. But for me, you know, using that now changing that narrative now, it does not stop any professional organisation, business, or any of the other, the associations we are part of.
Thank you very much indeed. So Oliver, right. So here's this language one. So don't overcomplicate it. Any group could decide to adopt it. But to me, it seems that we really need to get a broader agenda here for this. And I wonder whether you feel, Oliver, that the momentum is, because you raised it yourself, this language, in your opening statement. So you obviously consider it important.
I mean, I studied modern language at university, so language to me is so interesting.
Perfect. So Oliver, this issue specifically about how we get people on board this requirement, though.
Yeah, and ultimately, language has evolved, right, for over years and years and years. When did we start? What point in time did we start using the word guys? Wasn't that long ago. Wasn't that long ago in time that we started using this word guys. So it's not going to take that much effort to change it to folks, to change it to team, to change it to everyone. We just have to try a little bit. And we have to consciously call it out when it happens. We have to make, and as men, we need to make sure that we start to use gender neutral terms, even when we're in the presence of other men. That sounds mind blowing, but and so difficult. But for some people it really is, and we just need to call each other out on when that happens, and feel brave enough to do that, and not feel that we're we have to apologize for it or anything like that. I've done that before when people have said to me, oh, is your wife in? And I've gone, oh, I'm really sorry. It's it's a he. It's not my wife. And then I feel like I'm the one being awkward, and actually they're the people making me feel uncomfortable because they've made an assumption, and that's what we have to take away. It's an assumption that we all identify as one gender, and that's man, and that's why we need to use man guarding, and that all security officers are male, and that's why we do it. We have to just change it. We have to break the habit. Simple as.
Do you know what an interesting answer that you should say? Don't overcomplicate it. Very really good point. Okay, look, I'll take in that. Thank you. I want to move on though. I want to move on because we've only got a few minutes left. I want to tackle a few other issues now. And thank you to Panelists for that question. Lindsay Higgins. Now, she's asked a question actually that Sarah was the one I was reading earlier has asked about how we get more people into senior positions who can be example setting. Now, in a way, it's another thing I have to say as an outsider, another absolute disgrace. I mean, if you look at this, it is not the case. And I think you mentioned this, that this is being espoused in a way by example setting within organisations, not obviously to to a non-LGBT plus individual in the sense, I'm not involved in the way that you three are able to be involved. I mean, how do we change that? Is it bias or is it lack of support? How do we begin to think differently about progressing the LGBT plus up the hierarchy? Let me come to you first, Oliver, on this one.
Okay, yeah, massive topic, and there are a number of things that we do, and we're trying to do, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying in Securitas to increase and welcome the more LGBT people into not just Securitas but the whole sector, and make it more attractive. Recruitment is one. You've got to have an auditable recruitment process. Ideally, can you have more than one person rather in the room who is interviewing that person, so you can have a little bit more neutrality in decision making. You need a transparent recruitment process that you can go back and see what candidates have you had on paper. Are you interviewing diverse candidates, or are you just interviewing five straight white men and that's it? How do we change that, and how do we make sure that we as an employer become more attractive to LGBT people? I would, if I was looking for a new job right this second and I saw that my prospective organisation were super inclusive towards LGBT people, had policies outlined that supported parental leave, adoption leave, etc., and not just, oh well, law does that already for us. It's outlined in the policy specifically for LGBT people. That would make me feel so much more included in that workplace. Those are a couple of things that we need to do, and the network is crucial. And how do you build that network? It's not enough to just say, it's June, it's Pride Month, right? We better put a post up that says Happy Pride Month. Job done. I've pressed enter. Let's leave it at that. We've got to do more than that if you're going to have accurate representation in the workplace. It's going to take time. People don't, you look at C-suite. People don't tend to leave C-suite positions overnight. It doesn't, you're not going to be able to click a finger and suddenly have a diverse pool of candidates, shoved into a C-suite positions. So it is going to take time to change. And if you can start to see the impact of it slowly but slowly, that's really effective. And the last thing I'll say, like Columbo, one last thing, I promise, and is just with regards to targets. Diversity targets I think are a no-no. This is about creating an inclusive workplace. What you don't want to do is not include other people because you're trying to just meet a particular target. That's not effective diversity. That's not inclusion in the workplace. That's not what any of us want.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to move on. I'm going to come to you next, Heather. And it's really a bit related to that. We got a question in, and it's about how you make sure that you don't treat this as a tick box exercise. And we've got the same argument, by the way, on the green issue, the sustainability issue, that we'll just tick the box to show we're doing something, that we're not meaningful about it. I'm thinking if you were doing that, you would be quickly exposed by your staff at the very least, but maybe by your clients too. Am I right, Heather, or am I getting too simplistic now?
I don't think that's sustainable, because if you're doing it really to just check the boxes, the inclusive and equitable pieces that should be part of that diversity probably don't exist alongside it. It's more than just the D, it's the E and the I that go along with it. You need to create those inclusive spaces and create opportunity for folks to move ahead and move forward. And I'll move beyond that recruitment piece. How can we make an impact today with folks who already exist within the organization and create opportunity for females, LGBTQIA+ folks? How do we make that happen? And I think back to I was patting myself on the back of getting exposure at one point to a C-suite in an old role, and I kind of looked around and it was me and men. And the reason being is because we all shared similar interests. We were golfing, we played poker, we like to play hockey. But so the leadership stuck with and gave opportunity to those that it was safe. It was similar interests, similar things that they love doing through the day. So it provided an opportunity for junior folks joining the organization to get immediate access to that leadership. But there was no females a part of that conversation, because many of them were not interested in any of those things. Some will be, and that's fine. But I'm like, so I looked at it and I was like, how do you create those spaces? And I think that's on leadership. They need to make an effort to have conversations with folks who look different than yourself, with people who are at the front lines, with different genders, with different people who identify in different manners, with people with disabilities. You need to have conversations with those folks to start understanding their perspective, their interests. You might find a common ground that you didn't even know existed, but by having those conversations and creating that exposure, you're now giving them opportunity and seeing that this is possible, and maybe kind of lighting a spark, but creating that space that's equitable and inclusive, not just diverse, because you've done a great job of hiring on the front end.
Thank you very much indeed, Heather. Let me come to you, Satia, a different question from Marshall Kent, and an interesting one, actually. I watched a podcast I was listening to a podcast the other morning when I was doing the gym, and about this issue. With lots of workplace LGBTQ+ staff groups attending Pride parades this summer, what threats are present and security advice provided? I mean, I suppose the point is, Satia, is it the case that there needs to be some sort of special protection or special recognition or special support or for engagement in parades like that? Or is it just like any, or is that not on? Is it singling out the Pride community in a way that's unacceptable? I mean, I honestly don't know the answer to that question. Perhaps you could guide us on how we should think about it, Satia.
Well, there's two answers to this. So in terms of the security services that are going to be providing the protective services at this event. London Pride, for example, have reached out to us this year and asked us to support with, again, narrative, language for the security professionals to adhere to use and everything else. So because they perceive that the challenges around the public safety, the public and etc. around that could present risk. So we're working towards creating a guide, etc., to provide that. In terms of the risks presented to, we're going to be having 30 plus service providers, organisations at Pride this year. And again, the team that the work that the London Pride team do, the updates, the calls, the pledge, etc., communication on websites, social media platforms, through meetings. It's a 12-month process, Martin. So all of that gets looked at, ironed out. The preparation for it is absolutely sort of like off the scale. And the fact that they're now engaging with our sector about these types of events really is a big step in the right directions, because we can own that narrative, we can own that training piece, we can really support that. So yes, we appreciate, again, going back to the narrative language, and not only for the professionals who will be providing the services, but also for our people that are attending. And I'm
Satia, can I ask you one quick question on that, because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
You mentioned London Pride there, but I go, that sounds great, but I'm assuming that won't necessarily be the case across the board.
A lot of the prides that I'm involved in, so Birmingham and Manchester, it's a similar process.
Okay.
Anything out of that, again, Martin, we've not engaged with. And so
okay, so very quickly, Heather, because we're running out of time. Canada, is it as good as that?
I think there are spaces that are doing a decent job of that. I do think, though, that we are under threat, especially from a trans folks perspective. We're seeing it in every province here in Canada. People pushing back against drag reading or drag brunches, and so I think this just goes back to maybe duty of care of the company. If there is a perceived threat to their folks that are attending these type of events, are you extending, if they're participating on behalf of that company, are you monitoring? Are you looking at social media? Are you doing putting proactive measures in place, or providing them guidance as to what to do? I think it's much the same if there is a perceived threat, or there is that elevated threat presence, which we're seeing in a lot of places. Providing those resources and letting those folks know that you have their back. It may not exist depending on the location, but.
Okay, I just want to get across the point that there are some good examples of good practice, but we shouldn't take it as across the board. And of course, in some countries, it's not allowed at all. Let me just got one final question that I haven't addressed. I just wanted to get to you. The great thing about being the chair is you can ask really difficult questions and expect ridiculously good answers from panelists. You've got 20 seconds each to address this question. You have a magic wand. You can do one thing to put, as one of the anonymous attendees says, how to break through the old boys club style security and make it properly inclusive. A magic wand, you can do one thing. What would you most wish to happen, Oliver, with your wish?
Change people's perceptions, preconceived ideas of who LGBT people are. If I could wave any magic wand, it would be that, because I think that is the one thing that we need to do, and in order to change and break culture that has existed for some time. What's really interesting is that
20 seconds. You got 20 seconds. Hurry up.
I'll just say really quickly. Some of my white male straight friends will say that they currently feel marginalised at the moment, which is so ironic in this day and age. I think it's so important if we can change the perception of who LGBT people are. It will make a massive difference.
Okay, Heather, 20 seconds. Your magic wand. What are you going to wish for?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I think I'm just going to echo what Oliver said, because that encapsulated everything. Because by sharing experiences and changing perception and getting people to challenge their unconscious bias, like, it's just questioning things and getting people to challenge things and creating that safe space. So I'm with Oliver. That
Okay.
seems to wrap it all up.
Thank you, Heather. Satia, this
Don't
whole
add to
webinar
that.
was your idea.
In-
This whole idea, you get the final say, but only 20 seconds. Magic
Okay.
word, what you going to say?
Engagement. Go out and go to a Pride event, and you will be overwhelmed with a sense of belonging. And yeah, it really is a sensational feeling to be part of it. So yes, engagement, Pride is a great place to start. That's on top of everything else my wonderful colleagues have already said.
Thank you very much indeed, Satia. Thank you so much indeed, panelists. Listen, we could have gone on. So much more coming through in the questions. A fascinating topic. I'm pleased that we've raised this today. And of course, you've left us wanting more. And I'm sure we're going to come back to it I know we're going to come back to it in a later webinar. So thank you very much indeed to you. A few final comments, if I might, very, very quickly. Just let you know, the US Auspice closing date 14th of June, the Benelux Auspice 3rd of August, the Tax Economic Crime Awards on the 8th of August. Start to think about it, especially of the US, just 2 weeks left. Got 2 award ceremonies next week, the 2023 South Africa Auspice on the 7th of June, and the day after, get yourself to South Africa, then to Romania. We've got the Romania Auspice on the 8th of June. We're back again on the 22nd of June. We brought this webinar back a week so that we could hold it on the 1st of June, Pride Month. Robots, a security opportunity or a security threat. We've got another expert panel that's done in collaboration with the School of Criminal Justice at the University of South Africa. Thank you very much indeed once again to the panel. As they said, happy Pride Month, and very much looking forward to seeing you again somewhere on the circuit, perhaps at those events. Just finally for me to say, the copy of the webinar will be on the website tomorrow, as will be a blog. Thanks to Shrey in the background. Wherever you are in the world, until we meet again, stay safe.